against the back pieces. Let's talk about theoretical conversion. Again, theoretical conversion. This guide and I would say game analysis is going to freaking analyze high theory Sicilian Najdorf into a technically viable game. This core lesson is called Liquidation Efficiency, knowing exactly when to trade rocks and leaving my opponent in a frozen position. By move 34, myself, black, establishing anger and paralyzes right. Line the king and pass pawns to win a geometrical race. Now, let's get into the move analysis, and let's describe what these two words, liquidation and efficiency, is. Liquidation is the technique of trading off all your pieces, which could be major pieces, minor pieces, queens, rooks, knights, bishops, of equal value, or for long-term weaknesses, to get a less complex game. So when you liquidate, you put your opponent in such a frozen and restricted state where they have such less minor pieces, or minor pieces that are forced to do a bad part, or such a bad pawn structure, whatever the compensation may be. To simplify, what simplification means is you're simpling the position, you're removing complexities, you're removing minor pieces, pawn structures, line of attack, sacrifices, by removing material from the game by equal trades or fair trades or great or tactics, whatever the case may be. But let us get started. We're going to go by my move, technical analysis, and we're going to go skip into move 11. E4, King's Pawn opening, C5, most aggressive response, Sicilian defense, Knight F3, developing the Kingside Knight, Pawn to D6, I don't know how to say the name of the Sicilian, but I like to call it the positional Sicilian, D4, C takes D4, going in sort of an open positional Sicilian defense, I like to call it, Knight to F6, Knight to C3, defending the pawn, A6, transposing to a Najdorf, Bishop G5, pinning the knight, and the Najdorf Sicilian takes mastery of understanding when to pawn push. So, as you see, from memorization and understanding the theory of this freaking open, I go E6, simply fighting for the light squares, and my pawn on the D pawn fights for the dark squares and have a relatively better center, even though my knight's pinned to the queen relatively. Pawn E6, pawn to F4, supporting the bishop, fighting for the center. Knight to BD7, freaking queen to F3, supporting the center, supporting the getting a major piece out, working with defending the other knight, freaking simply just supporting this like sort of classical center pawns that are on the 4th and 6th rank type of tension. Queen to C7, long time castle, queenside castle, Bishop E7, disrupting that pin, that former pin. As my queen moved out, king to B1, guarding all the pawns. Pawn to B5, gaining a queenside advantage, simply restricting light squares, and stopping the light square bishop from getting out to do anything annoying, and using these pawns together to get a long-term fianchetto shadow potentially on this queen. This pawn could potentially be pinned. Let me get back to my notes as we get to move 11. So, majority of this was just theory and long-term prepping, and explaining why. So let's go into move 11. Pawn to E5. A mistake was a book move. It was a central break. White challenge to F6 knight. It opens the center. Any alternative? None. The evaluation is about 0.2 better for myself. Why is this a mistake? Immediately, I would say because of the backwards pawn. Even though it forces the knight to move, it also allows me to use a fianchetto bishop and to not even pin this pawn to the knight, but to simply say, hey, if you want to take my knight, I'm going to take your queen and damage your pawn structure. So this is why it's a mistake, because it's punishable. So as you see, I use freaking what's called Bishop B7, immediately challenging the queen. Immediately my opponent goes knight takes, D takes B5, which is offering a queen trade. The classic knight sacrifice, white gets 3 pawns for 1 pawn. So queen's side majority pawn in the long term, if white's able to liquefy and convert, my queen side majority pawns are going to be absolutely terrible. Long term effect of compensation, which is an accuracy I take. White takes back. And then move 13. As you see, knight to BB. Where are my document notes? Holy crap. I'm going for a classic knight of sacrifice. He takes f6 is also passive too. So let's go and talk about queen to b6. Let's call move 14. Let's again. What's it called? It was queen to b6. Simply guarding more protection of this pawn, attacking this knight, which putting pressure on the knight, and defending this bishop. So queen to c3, positional maneuver, taking the c file for itself. I go knight to e4, simply saying, hey queen, you gotta go offer a trade of the queens, or because I forged both your queen and bishop, here and here. Now queen to c7, move 15, queen to c6, offering a queen chase. Honestly, this was a mouse slip, and I completely did not mean to do that. I thought I blundered, but it wasn't an accuracy, thank God. Thank God my opponent got distracted, and I accidentally played hope chess for a move. That was a mouse slip. Queen takes e6, bishop takes e6, knight forks, king moves out the way, bishop takes. My opponent made a very dumb mistake by not taking the rook. I mean, son, why wouldn't you take the rook? Come on, it's a, what are you doing? It's a 3-0 pawn majority. Come on, bro, use your freaking brain. Come on, son, are you shit? I digress. But my opponent decided to take my rook for free, so I said, okay, thank you very much. So, where's my mouse at? Crap. Let me go and continue. Bishop takes e7, sacrificing the knight for some reason. I take the knight, saying thank you very much. Pawn takes the EDD6 check. And let me get back to my notes because I keep losing. Okay. Let's see. We are around. Let's go and push ourselves on. E takes d6. I step the king out the way to avoid the checks and get on a light square because the opposite color bishop. Bishop moves out the way. Kind of seems like a no point type of move. Bishop h4. Knight df6. Knight to d6. And bishop d3. Developing move, it bridges the bishop to an active battle, and black's knights are now coordinating together, so it tries to put pressure on the knight. So I do knight takes d4, hanging pawn, and then bishop takes f6. Goodness. Just get back to tape, push. Let's go, this. Yeah, knight takes d6. Bishop takes f6. Pawn takes. Rook takes g1, putting pressure on the semi-open g file. Pawn f5, consolidating my double pawn structure. Restricting the bishop. Pawn to g3. King to c7, defending the knight and the bishop, making sort of a defensive fortress with both the knight guarding the light squares, bishop guarding the light squares. And also the rook is moving out of this on attack. So my job right now is just simply guarding the light squares as much as I can with my knight, my king. And that was sort of my defensive fortress idea because I have a light square bishop. Excuse me. Let's continue our notes. My notes. You saw bishop d3. And the bishop, you could have won bishop e2 to make it more safer. Decided not to. Now we go to pawn to c4, pawn push. White tries to create counterplay inside play, but the weakness on the d4 square is significant, as if this bishop's able to become gone and my knight's able to invade and try to get outposts here later, is going to be really good for me. So, okay, knight to e4, offering a trade, simplifying the position. freaking black declines a trade, but wants to keep the tension, putting out my knight and outpost. Rook to b8, simply putting pressure on both of these pawns. A little bit unnecessary, but trying to sort of... I was thinking about simplifying right away, like this, but I wanted to put this move just so I can simply put pressure on both these pawns. So I can basically, if they're going to launch an avalanche storm, my rooks are going to rain of fiery artillery with my bishop and king. So I'm basically saying, hey, if you want to throw the pawn majority at me, come on, bring it. Okay. So, move 27, king a1, simply wasting an important move. I go h5, immediately taking away these two freaking... This square, even though if White wants to open up and sacrifice the pawn to open up this file, it wouldn't really make any difference because I can easily just defend all my pawns because they're all on light squares, and this bishop's already passive, so that's good for me. Let's continue. Let's go to move 29. Rook to d4, attacking my knight. I simply reroute my knight to continuously restrict more of these light squares, and where is my knight at? And to simply slowly try to use my king and bishop to advance forward together to make like this sort of defensive fortress like this. I believe I was thinking. Okay, so rook take to g1, stacking up on the g file. I go bishop e4, offering a trade to bishops. Bishop takes, pawn takes, e4. King to b1. I decide to actually, Stockfish calls this the blunder because it doesn't like me simplifying to only a minor piece endgame. Like if I take, and holy Christ, takes, then takes, there's only a one minor piece upgrade, but still I was confident enough to use this 2.0 converter advantage up a minor piece to win this endgame. So that's why Stockfish calls this a blunder. Was it a blunder in a human point of view? No. But from an engine point of view, potentially. Which I don't personally think is a blunder at all. Okay, let's go. Okay, so FTZ4 is the positional trade. And then as you saw, the liquidation is going to happen. Okay, pawn to b3. And then rook takes d4, liquidation. As you're going to see. Rook takes d4. Freaking pawn to f5. Rook to d2. Knight in the beautiful outpost like I wanted to do. Knight to d3. a4, advancing the a4 pawn. Rook to b8, putting pressure on this pin, making this pawn pin to the king, and threatening a check, and the knight and the rook to work together on the b pawn. King to c2 to defend. I reroute my knight to c5 to attack this pawn and to put pressure, double team this b3 backwards pawn. Pawn h3. Rook takes. Rook to g2, and I slide my rook over to threaten the skewer. Which my opponent actually was thinking and thought to myself, why would I potentially want to put my rook in the same file as your rook? To obviously use a tactic and take your pawn, you stupid bozo. Well, I just don't decide to be stupid. So, happy for him. Pawn to g4, opening himself up to a tactic. I sit here with 30 seconds on my, about 20 seconds plus on my clock, knowing that he just stood the game. Rook to g1, skewer, and my opponent resigns. So that's what happened. My opponent resigned as I play Stockfish level 8. For the rest of the game, we shall continue and work our way to move 41. Rook g1, what's it called? No, not e3. This is not it. Was this it? No, I did. Wait. What the hell? Oh no, this is the game I played this. I was like, I'm going to loop back. And then, wait, so back. Okay, so as you see, even though I am up even though I'm up a minor piece in this rook and knight endgame versus king and rook, as I'm winning. Pawn e3, creating multiple threats. My one major threat is a pass pawn. Pawn to g4, pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, another pass pawn, even though it's hanging, takes, push my pawn to e2, rook g1, defending the Positional square, knight to d3, A5. Freaking E1 equals queen. Rook takes. Knight takes check. King moves out the way. Knight plants itself on F3. C5. King to C6. King to C1. King takes. F5. Pawn takes. King to D1. Freaking Knight to D4. A6. Rook takes A6. King takes King to D2. Rook A3. King to C1. Rook A2. Rook to King to B1. Rook moves over to C2 to get defended by the knight. King A1. F4. King B1. F3. King A1. F2. King B1. F1 equal queen checkmate. As you saw, my opponent relied in this position of the game. I beat Fox's level 8 with this position. This shows how to convert theoretical winning endgames and conversion, simplification, and freaking liquidation. Now we are going to read the lessons and we're going to enjoy this. What are the key tactical concepts for myself? The square rule. Move 49, if you go back to reference, by moving my king to b7, I placed it inside a square of... If I have this part of the game, I know... Wait, I'll play this multiple times. No, because... I have the rest of the game. I don't have the rest of the game, but I'm going to do this from... Let's go to move 49. Go into the square, remove my as you use. The square rule is keep yourself within always not a square reach of any pawn that's passed. Mathematically, the pawn can no longer promote, allowing my knight and pawn to focus entirely on the E and F house, which was the other game that I played. So let's go into as the knight firewall. The knight on D3 acted as a hardcode defense. If white's kingdom moving towards the center, it effectively split the board into two. As you saw, this is why the ended evaluated so sharply. White was paralyzed by a single minor piece. And the final thing, guaranteed wins and endgames, two threat weaknesses, as you have to give your opponent multiple threats, because he can only focus on one thing at a time at endgame. As you saw me push the E and F pawns at endgame, the king can only defend one threat vector at a time. By pushing both, I overwhelmed the engine's defense capability. I won by simplification at the 2200 plus level, almost 2300 I believe now, by only making one blunder and one inaccuracy. Inaccuracy was a mouse, but a blunder was simply simplifying when it was not necessary. The hard part of the game is transition. I correctly ID'd. They identified the D3 knight was stronger than any rook combination white had left. I traded potential rooks for certainty. The knight outposts and passed pawns. Let's go into endgame mastery and simplification. Understanding king, defense, and the endgame. In the opening and middle game, the king is a liability that must be hidden, but in the endgame, the king transfers a relative value to a potential 4 to 5 pieces, how close it is to the center, and how active it is, and how effectively defense at this stage is about hiding, it's about active positioning, to prevent the opponent's pieces from penetrating my territory. And that the active king turns as a king in the center of the board. It is an anchor, as it centralizes itself, and a defender of so many different squares. It often works 3 to 4 points, equivalent to minor pieces. The concept is this: centralization. Moving the king to e4, d4, d5, e5, or a little bit to the side to the c5 square. From the king center, the king can swing or even flank and defend or attack pawns. The box method is using the king in pieces to create a barrier. It prevents the ending from reaching a pass pawn, as you've seen in move 50, knight to d4. And also opposition, placing the king opposite each other, between one squares between blocks the king and the king's movement forward, forcing them to retreat or step aside, controlling variables. And the art of simplification. Simplification, the process of trading pieces when you have a material positional advantage. Your goal is to remove the opponent's counterplay, quote. The chance to complicate the game. Excuse me. When it's able to simplify. Up material if you're a knight or a pawn. Trading pieces, not pawns. Increase the value of your extra material. Extinguish your attack to pawns mounting on the desperate attack. Trading queens or rooks kills their momentum. Enter a pawn win ending. You can calculate the resulting king and pawn endgame as a win. Trade everything. Trade pieces win ahead in material. Trade pawns win behind material. Winning multiple threats and weaknesses. Win every endgame. If you must match the two principles of 2 weaknesses, if your opponent has one weakness, they can use and defend it. you create the second weakness far away from the first, the pieces will be stretched too thin to cover both. Find the fixed weakness. Force the opponent's piece to stay passive and defend a specific pawn or square. My move 35. Rook b8, attacking b3. Open the second front. Use the pawns on opposite side of your board to create a second threat. Move 27, h5. Move 40, g4. And to switch up, move your sudden from attacking the first weakness to the second. The defender, being slow, will be failed to keep up. Now, as we wrap up, this is the concept. As you saw, centralization, the art of simplification, and the step-by-step formula. Now, as you saw me, simplification, trading rooks to win, positional defense, the Octopus Knight acts as a shield presenting the king, white king ever joining the fight. I naturally understood simplification in the game. I traded queens, move 16, and rook 3rd, move 32 at perfect moments. They stripped white of all tricks and let them purely in a technical walk. My king lost. My king's defense became successful because he used knight as gatekeeper. Stay on d3, d4, showing white remain game spectator when you promoted. Study the principle, 2 weaknesses, and practice king and pawn endings. Now, thank you, gentlemen, and freaking have a good day. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and learn this trash so you can play this well. Goodbye. Have a good rest of your night.